This new series is called Who Am I? Which is a good question to ask. Who am I? Where do I fit? And so we're going to be, over these coming weeks, looking at some different passages from Scripture. And again, really digging into what do you say about who we are? Because you know, what we believe about ourselves will shape the way that we live our lives, right? And so God's heart is that we would understand our identity in Him and in His love, and that will bring freedom to us, and that freedom will spill over into every area of our lives, our relationships, our career, our family, our purpose, our ability to live out of our faith. It all comes from knowing who we are. So my hope and my prayer is that over these coming weeks, you will just have moments of just experiencing God, bringing fresh clarity to your heart of who you are, who He says you are, what His truth is that you can take a stand on, and your value as a child of God. So this morning, to kick off, we're going to look at a story from the New Testament, from the Gospel of Mark, which was one of the 4 accounts we have in the Bible about the life of Jesus. And so we're going to read from Mark chapter 1, verses 16 to 20. And it's from very early on in Jesus' ministry, when he was just he'd gone public, he's growing up and all that kind of stuff. And we read about this time where Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, and he saw Simon and his brother Andrew casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. "Come follow me," Jesus said, "and I'll send you out to fish for people." At once they left their nets and followed him. When he had gone a little further, he saw James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John in a boat preparing their nets. Without delay, he called them, and they left their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired men and followed him. I love this brief episode from Mark's gospel. I love this depiction of ordinary guys just doing their thing, right? And then Jesus literally walks into their world. And I love the sense that's depicted here of how one encounter with Jesus can completely reorient your life. We've got Simon and Andrew, James and John, these 2 sets of brothers here. And at this point in their lives, fishing was the only real thing on the horizon. It was their place in life. It was their current reality. It would likely be their future. It was the family business that they were learning alongside their father and their other relatives, no doubt. And the rest of their lives would likely have involved continuing that family tradition and then in future passing that on to their sons. But then Jesus comes and steps into the midst of it. These are guys who, these were night shift guys. They would go out fishing in the nighttime, and then they would come back into shore at dawn. Hopefully they'd caught something, they'd mend the nets, prepare their nets, and then they'd go to bed. Night shift guys. Anyone work night shift? Glorious existence. I salute you and I honor you. I like sleep at night too much. I don't know if I could do that. But these guys are just here working hard to support their families, working hard to earn a crust. And then Jesus comes and extends an invitation to them. "Come follow me," Jesus says. "I've got things in store for you that go way beyond fishing in your boats." Simon and Andrew, James and John, they're not the elite of society. Fishermen tended to be looked down on in the first century world that they were living in. It wasn't really a profession that you really longed for or aspired to or dreamt of. It was kind of a necessity of life to feed your people. You could make a living from it. But these were blokey guys, calloused hands kind of guys, cussing and swearing kind of guys in all likelihood, salt of the earth kind of guys. And then Jesus comes along. And something happens where these guys, being so captivated with who Jesus is, they are willing in an instant to leave behind the security of their profession to be with Jesus and go wherever he would lead. And that's Jesus. I love that. He opens up a future for every single person who responds to his invitation And that future is broad, and it is open, and it is spacious, and it is beyond the dreams and the aspirations and the picture that we can build up in our mind of where we think our life is going and what we think it's going to look like. Jesus offers rebirth into a new life. He changes everything when we encounter him and when we respond to his invitation. And that was what happened for Simon and Andrew and James and John. And so this morning, as we begin this new series, I really just want to explore for a few moments the sense that Jesus wants to redefine our identity and our purpose. We all have an established sense of who we are, that we live our lives out of. Even if you've never thought about that concept or attempted to put words to what you feel about your own identity, the reality is we all have built up an idea of who we are, of where we think we fit in life, and we live out of that. We've done that on the basis of all the experiences that we've been through, the things that we think about ourselves, the things that other people have said to us or about us, both good and bad. There's all sorts of different things that feed in to our developed sense of identity, of who we are and of where we fit in life. And the beautiful thing is that whatever that sense of identity is that we've developed or formulated over time, Jesus wants each one of us to know the freedom that comes from allowing him to redefine our identity and our purpose in life. For Simon and Andrew and James and John, these brothers, these fishermen, Jesus comes and he says, "Come follow me, and I'll send you out to fish for people." I love the sense that Jesus, when he looked at these brothers, he didn't just see what everyone else saw. He didn't just see fishermen. He could see a future that was beyond their current reality. It was Jesus coming and saying, "I've got a plan for you. I've got a plan for using some of those great lessons that you've learned from your fishing. And I've got a plan for you to pull all that into what I'm doing. So come and follow me and come along for the journey." It's no longer going to be about fishing for fish. It's about fishing for people. See, what Jesus was doing right from this point of the initial invitation, Jesus was speaking to their existing sense of identity and purpose. He was beginning that process of redefining their identity and purpose. And Jesus wants to do that for each one of us too. And you know what? We all need Jesus to do this for us. Come on. See, everyone is trying to find their place in the world, eh? Everyone's trying to figure out, like, where do I fit? What is life about? Who am I? In our family, we're quite big Star Wars fans. And loving the new Andor series. If you're a Star Wars fan, do yourself a favour and get into it. But I love in New Zealand, we have a strong connection, not to the Force, but to the Star Wars kind of movies. We have Temuera Morrison, one of our greatest actors, who's had a key part in the series over the years. He was Jango Fett, a bounty hunter. And he was cloned to become all the clone armies that the Empire would have. So Temuera Morrison's face is very, very prominent in the Star Wars movies as a Kiwi. And there's one particular scene where Temuera Morrison's character, Jango Fett, he says this great line. He says, "I'm just a simple man trying to make my way in the universe." And I love it because he says it with a very Kiwi accent. In the midst of all this Hollywood glitz and glamour, "I'm just a simple man trying to make my way in the universe." Dr. Opara. That's who he was as well. Remember that back in the day on Shortland Street? How many years has Shortland Street been around for? I was quite shocked the other day to see it's actually still on. I just assumed it would have done its day. Is Coronation Street still around as well? Oh, wow. EastEnders? Oh, you're not so sure about that one, yeah. There's these things that you just grow up with and assume are always going to be there, eh? But yeah, I'm just a simple man trying to make my way in the universe. You know, we're just simple creatures trying to make our way in the world. And part of that is about trying to develop, trying to clarify, trying to find out, who am I? Where do I fit? You know, from a biblical perspective, we believe that God is the one who creates and gives life to every single human being. And so therefore we believe that every human life has an inherent dignity and value in being created by God. But all of us created by God are created by Him with a longing to know who we are and a longing to know our identity. And God's heart is that we would come to know Him, and that through a personal relationship with Him, we would know Him providing the answers for all the questions that we have about our identity. That we would discover His love, we would discover His truth, and that in that we would find what we've always been searching for. But you know, without knowing Jesus, we're still left with that longing to know who we are and where we fit. And without Jesus in the picture, what we are left to do is to try and find a sense of identity somewhere else. So what do? We can look to our career for our identity. We can look to our accomplishments. Think of how we often, as you know, in Kiwi society, when you meet someone new, how does that conversation often go? It's often like, oh, g'day, what's your name? I'm Phil. Oh, so what do you do? It's often one of the first questions, eh? And I think that in itself reflects the sense that in our culture, a whole lot of identity, we pin it to what we do. And that's okay, to a point. The challenge is if my whole identity is pinned to what I do, that can create some challenges, right? But when we don't know Jesus and His love, where are we going to pin our identity to? We can easily pin it to our career, to our accomplishments. We can look to our family to provide that sense of identity. And family provides a valuable sense of identity to a point. But no matter how good your earthly family would be, it's not going to provide the full sense of identity that God has intended you to know, because He wants to be the one ultimately who defines it. We can look within ourselves to create a sense of identity. You think, who do I feel like I am within myself? And if I have a strong enough feeling, I can take that and go, all right, I'm going to determine that this is who I am and this is how I'm going to live my life. But it's just been based upon what I want my life to look like. We can look to the opinions of others to define us. But you know, whatever sense of identity we construct for ourselves, ultimately, if it's not based on the love of Jesus and the truth of what He says about us, it's a foundation built on sand that will ultimately be exposed for its inadequacy. The house of cards will come crashing down at some point. But the invitation for each of us, like Simon and Andrew and James and John, is to come and follow Jesus and allow Him to redefine who we are, redefine what life is all alike, and to find our identity primarily in Him. I want to do something a little bit different this morning as a part of this message. We've got a storybook that we've read to our boys heaps in our family over the years as they've been growing up. It's a storybook that was written by a pastor, an author called Max Lucado from America, and it's called You Are Special. And I didn't just want to read this out this morning, so I've got it up on the screens for you to have a look at. It doesn't involve any Star Wars, don't worry, or Coronation Street. Have a look at this. This is, settle in, this is about 5 minutes or so. This is You Are Special. You Are Special by Max Lucado. The Wemmicks were small wooden people. All of the wooden people were carved by a woodworker named Eli. His workshop sat on a hill overlooking their village. Each Wemmick was different. Some had big noses, others had large eyes. Some were tall, others were short. Some wore hats, others wore coats. But all were made by the same carver, and all lived in the village. And all day, every day, the Wemmicks did the same thing. They gave each other stickers. Each Wemmick had a box of golden star stickers and a box of grey dot stickers. Up and down the streets all over the city, people spent their days sticking stars or dots on one another. The pretty ones, those with smooth wood and fine paint, always got stars. But if the wood was rough or the paint chipped, the Wemmicks gave dots. The talented ones got stars too. Some could lift big sticks high above their heads or jump over tall boxes. Still others knew big words or could sing pretty songs. Everyone gave them stars. Some Wemmicks had stars all over them. Every time they got a star, it made them feel so good. It made them want to do something else and get another star. Others, though, could do little. They got dots. Punchinello was one of these. He tried to jump high like the others, but he always fell. And when he fell, the others would gather around and give him dots. Sometimes when he fell, his wood got scratched, so the people would give him more dots. Then, when he would try to explain why he fell, he would say something silly, and the Wemmicks would give him more dots. After a while, he had so many dots that he didn't want to go outside. He was afraid he would do something dumb, such as forget his hat or step in the water, and then people would give him another dot. In fact, he had so many grey dots that some people would come up and give him one for no reason at all. He deserves lots of dots, the wooden people would agree with one another. He's not a good wooden person. After a while, Punchinello believed them. I'm not a good Wemmick, he would say. The few times he went outside, he hung around other Wemmicks who had lots of dots. He felt better around them. One day he met a Wemmick who was unlike any he'd ever met. She had no dots or stars. She was just wooden. Her name was Lucia. It wasn't that people didn't try to give her stickers, it's just that the stickers didn't stick. Some of the Wemmicks admired Lucia for having no dots, so they would run up and give her a star, but it would fall off. Others would look down on her for having no stars, so they would give her a dot, but it wouldn't stay either. That's the way I want to be, thought Punchinello. I don't want anyone's marks. So he asked the stickerless Wemmick how she did it. It's easy, Lucia replied. Every day I go see Eli. Eli? Yes, Eli, the wood carver. I sit in the workshop with him. Why? Why don't you find out for yourself? Go up the hill, he's there. And with that, the Wemmick, who had no stickers, turned and skipped away. But will he want to see me? Punchinello cried out. Lucia didn't hear. So Punchinello went home. He sat near a window and watched the wooden people as they scurried around, giving each other stars and dots. It's not right, he muttered to himself. And he decided to go see Eli. He walked up the narrow path to the top of the hill and stepped into the big shop. His wooden eyes widened at the size of everything. The stool was as tall as he was. He had to stretch on his tiptoes to see the top of the workbench. A hammer was as long as his arm. Punchinello swallowed hard. I'm not staying here, and he turned to leave. Then he heard his name. Punchinello? The voice was deep and strong. Punchinello stopped. Punchinello, how good to see you. Come and let me have a look at you. Punchinello turned slowly and looked at the large bearded craftsman. You know my name? The little Wemmick asked. Of course I do. I made you. Eli stooped down and picked him up and set him on the bench. The maker spoke thoughtfully as he looked at the grey dots. Looks like you've been given some bad marks.
I didn't mean to, Eli. I really tried hard. Oh, you don't have to defend yourself to me, child. I don't care what the other Wemmicks think. You don't? No, and you shouldn't either. Who are they to give stars or dots? They're Wemmicks just like you. What they think doesn't matter, Punchinello. All that matters is what I think. And I think you're pretty special. Punchinello laughed. Me? Special? Why? I can't walk fast, I can't jump, my paint is peeling. Why do I matter to you? Eli looked at Punchinello, put his hands on those small wooden shoulders and spoke very slowly. Because you're mine. That's why you matter to me. Punchinello had never had anyone look at him like this, much less his maker. He didn't know what to say. Every day I've been hoping you'd come, Eli explained. I came because I met someone who had no marks, said Punchinello. Oh, I know, she told me about you. Why don't the stickers stay on her? The maker spoke softly. Because she has decided that what I think is more important than what they think. The stickers only stick if you let them. What? The stickers only stick if they matter to you. The more you trust my love, the less you care about their stickers. I'm not sure I understand. Eli smiled. You will, but it will take time. You've got a lot of marks. For now, just come to see me every day and let me remind you how much I care. Eli lifted Punchinello off the bench and set him on the ground. Remember, Eli said as the Wemmick walked out the door, you are special because I made you and I don't make mistakes. Punchinello didn't stop, but in his heart he thought, I think he really means it. And when he did, a dot fell to the ground.
So, without knowing the love of Jesus, we end up like Punchinello, trying hard to impress others and earn gold stars and hide our imperfections that could result in being given grey dots. Simon and Andrew, James and John, these fishermen, they certainly had some stars and dots when Jesus invited them to come and follow him. They were fishermen. That meant that they hadn't made the grade in terms of the society of their day. They weren't seen as candidates for progression in the spiritual life of their community. All Jewish males would learn the scriptures from a young age, and then if you were good enough, you would maybe go on to further rabbinical training. But if you didn't make the cut, you would then go back and essentially take over the family business or learn how to do it. So Simon and Andrew, James and John, these two sets of brothers who Jesus calls to follow him and be with him, they weren't the best of the best. They were rejects in the eyes of the society of their day. They didn't make the grade. Maybe they were pretty good fishermen. Again, because if you've experienced rejection, what we're left with is to try and go, okay, well, again, where do I fit? How do I deal with that? So maybe they were pretty good. Maybe they got some good reviews in the local fishing magazine. Like, oh, you really want some good fishermen? Go and see James and John, Simon and Andrew. Maybe they felt a sense of pride from getting some gold stars, some positive reports from others, some encouragement. Maybe that built up something of a sense of identity for them. But Jesus came and actually called them away from this thing that they were largely pinning their identity to at that point. You know, I look back on my life, and before I became a Christian, when I was around 20 years of age, my whole life was about achievement. That was how I was trying to build up a sense of identity for myself. I just kind of went, you know what? If I do stuff well, generally speaking, people will like me. If I can achieve at sport or at school or whatever, I'll be more popular and that feels nice. So that was how I'd lived a whole lot of my life. But you know what? I look back at that now, and that is an exhausting way to live. Trying to maintain a facade, trying to always keep achieving more. There's got to be more. There's got to be the next thing that I can do to keep getting more gold stars. That was what my life was about. And then Jesus came and stepped into the midst of it all. When I'd begun to realize that the whole thing was a bit of a house of cards, Jesus just came and said, Phil, come and follow me. And he began a process of redefining my identity and my purpose. In our culture, see, we talk a bit about getting comfortable in our own skin, don't we? And by that, it's sort of code for, part of growing up is that you've got to settle into who you are and, find your identity is essentially what it's about. But the problem that I see with this whole idea of getting comfortable in your own skin when Jesus is not in the equation is that I'm just another broken human being trying to establish a sense of identity for myself to counteract the thoughts and the opinions of other broken human beings. Like that's what it's left with, eh? So it's really good to be able to defer to a higher authority. Come on. Like we're all just simple creatures making our way in the universe. Who are you to define my identity? But who am I to just choose an identity for myself? What an incredible thing it is that God, our Father in heaven, the one who created us, the one who gave us life, the one who knows us better than we know ourselves, he invites us to come and know him. And he says, I want to be the one who defines who you are because I know you better than anyone. I know you better than you even know yourself. And I want to reveal truth to you about who you really are and where you really fit in this life. And that's where freedom is found in Jesus. Jesus wants to liberate us from the soul-destroying games of popularity and performance, comparison and competition that life is reduced to apart from the knowledge of his love. That's what life is reduced to. Jesus offers a better way to live life than what the world we live in offers. Jesus offers freedom. And it's a freedom that progressively over time truly enables us to know who we are and truly enables us to grow into the skin that God has created us with. In his love, in the love of God, the dots and the stars just one by one begin to kind of peel off because they don't matter to us anymore. And it's not that we just live our lives completely oblivious to what other people think. I'm not just going to be cold and callous and uncaring. The love of God transforms us on the insides, but we're freed to live life following Jesus, number one, and whatever that requires of us, and whatever that looks like, and however other people may respond to that, ultimately doesn't matter because I know the love of my Father defining who I am. See, there's so many little ways that this works out in our lives. Even this morning, I get up, have a shower, what am I going to wear to church? Or I don't know if I want to wear that shirt, it's a bit loud. Someone might have a comment about it. Someone might say, oh, Phil, not sure about that shirt, questionable. This one. Yeah, I actually chose the one. Because I'm thinking about this message, I'm like, seriously, do I want to live my life that way? Being so consumed with what other people will think or say if I choose a particular wardrobe option, let alone choice of what I'm going to pursue. I don't know about you, I don't want to live that way. God's heart is that we know freedom. In his love, progressively, the dots and the stars both fall away because they just don't mean as much to us. We're going to bring this to a close shortly. Let me read to you from Psalm 139. This is part of God's truth of what he says about each one of us and our identity. Actually, can we read this together, church? Can you help me with this? Let's read together. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. See, whatever anyone else has said about you in your life, this is what God says about you. God made you as an expression of his love and creative power. He didn't just slap you together as an afterthought. You have been created in his image as a unique, one-of-a-kind representation of him for the world. And the ideal is that that kind of truth becomes a foundation for our lives. I want to put a challenge out there to us all over this coming month. These words, I would challenge you to make a point each day for this coming month of reading these words and making this your prayer, a way that you connect with God each day. Maybe even as we're reading over those words this morning, there's bits where you're like, oh, I'm not sure if that's me. You're like, oh, I don't know if I'm that wonderful. I don't feel very wonderful. I don't know if God, I've been fearfully and wonderfully made. Maybe it feels a bit uncomfortable to actually claim this and go, this is God's truth for me. That sense of discomfort in itself is an indicator of where your sense of identity's at. And my heart for all of us is that as we meditate and think about these words prayerfully, that the Holy Spirit will just come and settle something within our spirit, deep within us, where this becomes not just words on a page written thousands of years ago, but it becomes truth that is real and that is personal, and that we know the Father declares over our lives and that we are able to live out of every day of our lives. So make a little bit of time each day to read these words again, to focus on them, to allow the Holy Spirit to imprint that truth in your heart. That's an example of what it looks like for us to do what Punchinello did, of kind of going to the wood carver and just saying, what do you say? I've got all this other stuff that I think or that other people say, but what do you say? This is the response of the wood carver. Our Father in heaven, the one who made us, he says this about us. Jesus invites us to follow him no matter what our backstory has been, and no matter how we've been defined in the past. Isn't that beautiful? I love that. Maybe you've been told that you'll never make it. Maybe, sadly, you've been told that you're a disappointment. Maybe you've been told that you're a failure, that you'll never amount to anything, that you're crazy to have dreams and aspirations because someone like you could never do that. That's not the voice of your Maker, because that's not truth. Yes, we fail. Yes, we get it wrong. Welcome to the human race, simple beings making our way through the universe. But our past does not define us. Our past need not limit us. Our past and the opinions of others need not be a millstone weight that holds us and inhibits us from being able to move forward into everything that God has for us. My prayer is that we would all increasingly know the freedom that Jesus brings as we allow him to redefine our identity and our purpose.